Hey, I'm Rachel,
And I'm Amanda, and this is Beyond a Ballot.
powered by DoorDash. Welcome to an emergency episode of the Beyond a Ballot podcast. I'm Rachel, here with Amanda. Hi. We are post-election. We're both like in the clouds. What even happened? But we wanted to make sure, and we've been getting so many people reaching out saying, what happened? Can you translate this for us? Can you break it down? So instead of just spelling it out on the internet, we thought we would come on here and talk about what happened at time of taping. We are our pre-Kamala Harris speech. So we're taping a little earlier in the day, but we are post the declaration that Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States, or the president-elect. Amanda, how are you feeling? Let's just dive in here.
I mean, I think I feel the way a lot of people, and especially a lot of women feel. I feel heartbroken. I feel like this is a really devastating loss. And I feel a sense of dread and unpredictability and uncertainty around what his leadership will mean. I feel confused by Americans who went out and vote. This was a decisive victory. This wasn't close.
Oh, yeah.
They decided en masse that this is what they wanted. And I'm, on many levels, very concerned for women's health and women's rights, which we've talked a lot about. I'm obviously concerned for the impact on Canada, what the proposed tariffs could look like, and how that will affect our own economy. Mostly I'm just very, very, very alarmed at the fact that a man who is a felon, who has been convicted, who has committed sexual assault, who incited violence in his own country, who spends his days, refusing the truth in favor of lies, can be the president of the United States, but a capable, hardworking, professional, educated, law-abiding woman in 2024 cannot. I think that's what I'm feeling.
That feels heavy.
I know.
Did you see the Vanity Fair online
Yeah.
cover today? If anyone hasn't seen it, they kind of laid out that same argument of, felon, whatever, all these things against Trump.
6 bankruptcies, 2 impeachments.
Yeah, exactly. And then it said 47th president of the United States. I mean,
yeah.
Today feels heavy. And, we talked about this last week. We talked about our predictions, and I predicted this. I have now predicted 4 elections in the last 4 weeks. But doesn't feel great for some of them. This one, I was even giving a talk yesterday and to a group in British Columbia, and they asked me, like, what are your thoughts for tonight? And I said, Donald Trump's going to take it, and we just have to wait and see if I'm right. And so, like, my gut was there, but I feel like my brain is catching up. And for me, with all these elections, it's like, as a campaign enthusiast, it's like, what went wrong here? What went wrong for the Harris campaign? And I've just been surrounding myself with information over the last 12 hours. And it's so interesting. I think the way that they were looking, how it came down to specific counties.
Yes.
And how they were waiting, in a giant state like Pennsylvania for specific counties to come in. Yeah. And the craziest part is that there was predictions that Harris would win some of these counties, and they just kept turning red. And the number of votes for Donald Trump, I think, is what this was a landslide. I mean, we were watching 7 states the entire night. He picked up every single one of them. She didn't even do as well as Joe Biden in New York. Like, then it goes back to, like, how did this happen? What happened? And a lot of talk today about the Latino vote in the United States. And there's a lot of those swing states, Arizona, particularly Nevada, where there are big Latino populations. And I was listening to the news in the US, talk to a few people that are Latino, and they said at the end of the day, the message, and a couple of them said they never voted Republican before, the message of the economy and stability in the economy is what drove people out to the polls. And we talked about this last week, like what's going to get people out. And I wonder if the Harris campaign, if hindsight is 2020, I mean, we could have been having a really different conversation today. We were hoping we would be. But now I think, did the Harris campaign do enough to get her policies out there to sell a message of what she stood for? Or were they really just trying to be the anti-Trump vote, and that backfired?
Well, I think it's interesting when you look at the exit polls and some of the polling that's been done around the issues that mattered most to the voter based on which campaign they voted for. So we saw almost 80% of Trump voters were voting for the economy versus 20% of Harris voters. At the same time, 80% of Harris voters were voting for the importance of democracy, with less than 20% of Trump voters voting for that. Immigration, 89% of Trump voters were voting on immigration. 89%. And that was 76% of abortion for Harris. So I don't necessarily think it was the anti-Trump message. It was a different message that the Harris campaign stumped on. And that message ultimately didn't resonate as much as I think the affordability message for Trump. Was abortion motivating enough across both genders, across all races? It looks like no. Was the importance of democracy a stronger issue than the economy or immigration? Looks like no. So I do think at the end of the day, those messages, his messages, or the policies that they chose to focus on were more motivating and more appealing, drove more voters to the polls than anyone really anticipated. Like you said, I think one of the biggest takeaways and one of the scariest parts for Democrats will be looking at the safe states and how their numbers dwindled in those safe states. Like there were a lot of surprises last night. We talked about Trump's, the almost inevitability of a Trump victory, but I did not expect what happened last night to happen. I expected, a razor's edge margin. And that is not what we got. To your point, these 7 battleground states, just one by one, plucking them off, but worse, really losing ground, gaining ground in places like Florida and Texas and Ohio, and losing ground in places like Virginia and New York, which are safe, which have been safe blue wave states.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember even yesterday they were saying and the messaging was so clear, like, don't expect a result on election night.
Totally.
I'm having like flashbacks to the BC election, which by the way is not over yet.
Still going.
Again, there was issues with elections BC this week, but that's a whole other episode. I was thinking like, I'm going to wake up on the West Coast and we're still not, the next day on Wednesday morning, we're not going to have an answer because some of these states are going to be so close. I went to bed on the West Coast knowing who the president-elect was.
Oh, I know.
That was crazy. And that was not expected. I mean, this is going to have to be a real dissection for the Democrats on how they can sustain some momentum in those blue states, which is crazy.
For sure.
Crazy.
And you think in many ways, she had all of the tools in the toolkit, right? Like she had all of the ingredients for what we have traditionally considered to be a successful campaign. Money. She was out fundraising. She was out spending. They had more ads. They had more people on the ground. They had everything that you would expect one
Digital.
To need to literally blow it out of the water.
Right.
And yet we have seen the entire country move further right. which would be, some would say, a lot of analysts will say, this is the global trend. This isn't just, a North American trend. This is the global trend of moving to the right. But I think as Democrats look and analyze this particular election and how they prepare themselves for 2028, it has to be more than the traditional tools. It has to be more than the money and more than the great candidate and more than the excellent, orator. It really has to be the message. What message is resonating? How do they get to those rural voters? How do they get to those blue collar workers? How do they get to the areas of the country that they're not even making a dent. They are so far off the ability to connect with those voters.
I hate to be the one to ask this, but this is something that a bunch of people ask me is, if she was not a woman, would that make a difference? If this was, I don't know, I was going to say Barack Obama. That's how tired I am. But another man from somewhere that had come in to replace Joe Biden. What is there still a hit that women take in going for the White House?
I don't think that there's any evidence to suggest that they're not taking a hit, because we haven't cracked that one yet. So
yeah, no kidding.
I just don't think we're there. But you had a very popular candidate. You had a very well-liked, huge celebrity endorsements. I mean, honest to God, it was a made in heaven campaign. You looked at this thing and you thought, this is what so it's hard to imagine, a more suitable candidate, truly. I mean, of course, they'll regroup. Of course, there will be other candidates. But a two-time kind of two capable women who have lost on the ballot, I think is a big blow. But it's not just that they lost. They took some women's rights with them. And I think that the feeling of dread that I have, as a Canadian looking in, is on topics like that. Like, what happens to, is there a nationwide abortion ban? Can you imagine? I mean, but we have to imagine, because this is real life. This is happening. Will there be widespread deportation of people?
That's a big question.
What is Ukraine feeling this morning?
I know.
And on top of all that is the volatility of this, narcissistic leader who may be given unprecedented ability to act. They won the Senate. They could possibly take the House. And that is something that he did not have in his last term.
Exactly. I think that shifts it a lot for those listening. The two houses,
Yes.
both turning Republican would be, no availability of this checks and balances that existed after the 2016 election, where it was Democrats. Another big question floating around is Shapiro, and whether or not the governor of I was going to say Philadelphia, Pennsylvania would have been the better choice for vice president and potentially could have helped her win that state. I mean, ultimately, when you look at the way it broke down, he just swept all 7 of the states. So it didn't really make a difference, but there's a lot of talk about that today and whether or not that would have helped.
Yeah. And I think that if she ultimately would have taken Michigan,
yes,
there would have been more to that. I think the fact that he took the 7, it's going to be really hard to, lay this blame.
With Gretchen Whitmer. That's her state. And it went red. And she was a campaign co-chair for Kamala.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. But this is definitely the tone and tenor of the American voice right now. Right. Yeah. And I think it's easy just to, and I think my instinct, and I wonder if a lot of listeners feel this way, the first thing I felt so angry and so disappointed and so America, what have you done? But I think that there's this tendency for us to just really get angry and blame. And the truth is that the majority, he also won the popular vote. The majority of Americans voted for this. And there's a reason for that.
Yes.
And we have to,
exactly,
at some point, we're allowed to be angry. We're allowed to be upset. But at some point, we have to park that to understand this great divide, this huge chasm that exists in the electorate, and start to understand what are the bridges that we can build. And that's true up here in Canada as well, as we brace ourselves for a Canadian federal election.
Not even the federal campaign, but like British Columbia, because I'm so obsessed with it out here. But, even on election night, people were saying like, oh, the Conservatives, they're coming in. And it's like, well, they got 50% of the popular vote. Like there are people that are voting for these people. It's the same with Trump. I mean, he has a full mandate. It wasn't that he won. It's that he won with the majority of American votes. And I think my reaction is a little bit different than yours. Like I really was emotionally prepared. And again, like I was all in on Kamala. I would have loved to have been sitting here. I had my girls at the TV and they all knew there was a girl running and a boy running. And mommy really wanted the girl to win, but maybe the boy was going to win, and the boy ended up winning. But I think that I was more emotionally prepared for it. I was just looking at the ground game. I was looking at people in my life that were responding to this Trump message, and differently than in 2016. People that had never, American relatives that had never voted for Trump, and were starting to say like, my life is getting really hard in the United States and we need change. And that blame is going on to the Biden-Harris campaign, and I can't vote for her. I started to like really clue in that message. And it's something we've seen up here too. I mean, look at the change. These are change elections, and we have to remember the context of the fact that we are now a couple of years post-pandemic. Life is starting to get back to normal, and yet the economy and people are struggling, like really, really struggling. And we can't lose sight of that. And the power that people feel that they hold is in their vote, hopefully. Many feel that their voice is heard through the voting process, which is great. But it also means that when they're struggling, they need to blame someone. Totally. And I think that resonated in the United States. So when I found out, when I looked at the map, and I was looking quite early and thinking like, there's no path to victory here for Kamala. Like I said that to my husband quite early on in the evening. I felt like, okay, I kind of knew this was going to happen. Now what? And how do we adjust based on this new reality? Maybe it was the political staffer in me. Like, this is the result. We have to figure out how to make this work. But I started to really think about Canada and the relationship that we have with the United States. We saw this morning both Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau come out and make a statement to Donald Trump, congratulating him. Huge difference, I think, in the two statements. Pierre Poilievre, I'm going to break down in a second, but Prime Minister Trudeau's was very to the point, very simple, and it felt a little bit like he did not want to. He did not want to. Well, I don't know about congratulate, but he definitely didn't want to weigh in on anything that could get him in trouble because of the history there. But it was, I called it on Instagram the vanilla ice cream of statements, because it was very bland, and that was on purpose. Contrary to that, Pierre Poilievre was very clear in his position. I think that's something that people have been watching as to what might happen, what his response
What did Poilievre say?
He said that he will fight for Canada, that he will ensure that we get our money back on deals that Trudeau had made. So he went full guns blazing. And I was driving and listening to this, somebody on the radio talk about it. And I was thinking, he had two choices. He could either align himself to Trump and say, congratulations to my dear friend Donald. And then the domestic issue for him would be that the Liberals will come out and try and align him to Donald Trump. Or he can come out guns blazing and say, we are sticking up for Canada, and hope that eventually when he becomes prime minister, this can all be smoothed out. But I think that
he does remember that Trump holds a grudge, right? Like,
yes.
Nothing says buddy like challenging Trump. I mean, that's worked for. Let's think about it. Oh, nobody.
Zero
literally
people.
Nobody. 0 people. So I don't know. I don't know if that was the right call.
Think about the opposite, though.
Yeah.
If he had come out and said, like, congratulations, Donald Trump, I'm so excited about your presidency, what would the liberal spin through the entire federal campaign be? Oh, you're buddies with Donald Trump. And Pierre would be wearing everything that Trump's about to do. And in my opinion, Pierre is not aligned to Donald Trump. We're just not in. And I think we are so lucky to not be in that Republican camp in this country. And we are not, like, I really want to put perspective to people that it's very stressful. There are, major issues in the United States. We feel some of them, but we are also very lucky to live in a country where we have more than 2 parties, where we have a lot more dialogue, a lot more diversity in policy making. And so I think it was a hard place for Pierre to come in on a Trump win. But I don't disagree with that statement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out now, because depending on how crazy Trump is in the first few months of his mandate, that really has the potential to scare a lot of Canadian voters.
Totally.
Right? And if the Liberals are able to successfully attach that to Poilievre and the Conservatives in some way, that could shift where this election is heading. If 100%. We get to, a next fall election. So it'll be interesting to see how the parties play this over, the coming month. Inauguration day isn't until January, so there is time. But that will be one to watch. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about what are the effects on Canadian, not just the relationship with the US, but how each political party either uses the Trump presidency to their advantage or tries to buffer against it.
I think this was a big win for the Liberals, to be honest. I think that
Rachel, we can only hope, because I could use a win right now. You know what I mean?
A little win. This is the silver lining here.
We'll take it any way we can get it.
This will help you guys, though.
I was so sad about this morning, though. I just have to say this also, because you mentioned talking to your daughters, and one of my daughters, Vivi, she came running down the stairs this morning. Honestly, this broke my heart. I literally almost burst into tears. Did she win?
Oh my God, I just got goosebumps.
And it's like, it's so sad. And I was talking to my friend, Melissa, who had actually booked a hotel room for Inauguration Day to bring her daughter there. Should it happen.
My God, I just got goosebumps.
I know. And it's like all of these, like there are many macro issues that we have to contemplate.
Yeah.
But I think that we can't be so quick just to jump from the very fact that for a lot of women and a lot of young girls and a lot of Black women and a lot of women of color and a lot of, I think there were many hopes wrapped up into this potential presidency. It happened with Hillary, and now it's happened again. And you don't have to be American to feel that kind of hope and to feel that sort of disappointment. And
totally.
It's okay to carry that for a while.
Yeah. It just kind of feels like we're banging our heads on the wall.
I know. Or the
women.
Glass ceiling.
Yeah. Or a glass ceiling as women. Like, I was talking to my mother-in-law this morning about it, and she said, don't worry, in their lifetime, they will see a woman in the White House. And it's like, our parents probably thought that their children would see a woman in the White House.
For sure.
We haven't yet.
Yes.
I mean, Kamala Harris was in the White House. She was vice president. But as president of the United States, we haven't seen an elected woman in Canada yet. I mean, when we talked to Kim Campbell, she said, imagine me thinking back then,
totally,
in the early 90s, that still we would not have an elected woman in Canada.
We still haven't done it.
We haven't done it. And like, we talked last week about how many firsts we saw in the last few weeks, the premier of New Brunswick and British Columbia with the majority female legislature, it's just like, how do we get to the top? How does this happen? And will it happen in our daughter's generation?
I mean, we can only
or
hope.
Ours. We can only hope. Like, come on. Come on. What does it take? What do we need to do? I think women were motivated in this campaign, and Kamala's biggest voting base was educated women.
Yeah.
She was able to pull them out, but she couldn't pull out the men, and especially young men, which we're seeing are going more and more conservative all over the world, which is a whole fascinating thing.
He swept the white, no college degree man.
Mm-hmm.
And she took the white college graduate, non-white, no college degree, and non-white college graduate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A bunch of white men.
Yeah. Yeah. Elected a white man. But
surprise,
we kind of knew that was going to happen.
We kind of knew that one was coming.
I just feel like so frustrated after Hillary. I mean, this just went down the same way. And especially to Donald Trump, like the cherry on top. Anyways, we now have to shift our focus, though, and deal with it. We have to see what comes out of this, hope for a better experience than we saw last time, and specifically the impact on Canada. That's what I'm watching.
Exactly. And we have another episode this week, right?
We do. And we're going to break down everything even more once we have some more results.
That's
so
right.
Tune in on Friday. We have some voices from the U.S. coming to talk to us about it and what it's like on the ground there. But for now, that is our breakdown and our feelings on last night's election. Reach out and let us know if you have any more questions. We will happily answer them on Friday. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening. New episodes air every Friday.
Subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and find us at beyondaballot.com.